Today I'm joined by Sasha Plavsic, founder of Ilia Beauty, the clean makeup brand that's completely changed the game. After maxing out credit cards and starting out in her parents' garage, almost a decade later, she has built a $200 million beauty empire that proves that slow and steady wins the race. So let's find out why she's a lady who launched.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 0, all engine running. Liftoff, we have liftoff.
Before we get into it, if you like this episode, which I know you're going to, please don't forget to like and subscribe and to share it to your group chat. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to sit down and talk to you. And I always like to start these conversations in the same way, and that is by sort of going, without being too deep, going back to our childhood, because I really think there's you connect the dots to the entrepreneur that you are now and the entrepreneur that you've become. How much do you think the way that, how much do you think the way that your childhood has shaped you and how you see beauty and how you see business? Where was your childhood? What did that look like?
So I grew up in Vancouver, Canada, where I'm currently living again. And I would say it's shaped me a lot. I grew up in the woods outside of the city. It's about 35 minutes, but it's so isolated. It was just a small cove. There was 20 homes. My dad was an immigrant. He was from Serbia. So he had gone through World War II. He was born in 1930. And I would say being raised by somebody like that very much influenced how I became an entrepreneur, how I approach things, how I choose to solve things, just because, I don't know, he had a very, I think growing up in a communist regime and then being released from that and being able to find your own way, there was such freedom in coming to North America and being able to make your own choices and your own decisions. And that was in the early 50s for him. So we were the second set of kids. He was, married once before. So I think had a lot of time to spend with him and just learn really an old way of the world. He was an architect, so I was very much entrenched in design and art and architecture, and that was his degree. So it was nice to be able to, I grew up with a lot of color around me, which I think really influenced things. And then, I had a mom who stayed at home and was really there, and it was a really beautiful childhood, I think, overall. There was definitely things that and hardships that shaped me that I've realized over the years, but overall I think the influences were all there to kind of pave a pathway for what I wanted to do.
And you said something which was really interesting, actually, because we look at striving for certain things or wanting a lot, but actually the ability in solving a problem and problem solving, you kind of, for me anyway, I was blissfully unaware that that's something and that's a skill set that I'd need when I'm kind of lost in that world of being a creative. Problem solving is so, so important.
Yes.
And what did you think you learned from your dad when it comes to problem solving?
Resiliency. Yeah, I think there's, for him, again, it was so limiting where he was from after the war, and to even survive a war, which was a pretty brutal war, and some of the things that he went through and some of the things that he saw, he always would say, you can do anything you want to do, you can be anything you want to be. It takes a lot of hard work, but really, the world is your oyster. And I think he really felt that sense of freedom again, just from being able to choose what he wanted to do and to not have a government per se kind of pressing down on him and his choices. And so that was very much carried through. And I do believe if we're born in certain places or certain countries, there is that opportunity. I grew up in Canada, but the business was born more or less in Canada and then grew up in the United States. And I have to say, even between those two countries, the United States has so much to offer to a business. And their mindset was very much like his. I'd actually consider Canada to be slightly more conservative.
Okay.
And I tried to do the business there, but nobody wanted to deal with it. People didn't want to manufacture for me. There wasn't like the same type of, let's go for it attitude.
Yes.
And I would say south of the border is really what helped propel the company forward. I actually ended up moving back to California a year after I started it in 2011. And that was where I was able to manufacture. That was where I was able to really do what I wanted to do and be who I wanted to be in a way that I felt was very freeing. So I'm grateful to the United States for that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It does always feel like the land of opportunity.
It really is. I don't think that this business would be where it is if I didn't go there. Wow. I don't think it would have been possible at all.
That is so interesting. Let's talk about the younger you in terms of school. When you studied, because like a lot of, like you say, a lot of those traits of being an entrepreneur are really absorbed. They're kind of, situational, and you don't realise that until later on necessarily. But when you were at school age, did you know what you wanted to study, or did you feel like you were trying to figure, because a lot of us are figuring out who we are, right? But then there'll be that unicorn that's like, I know exactly what I'm going to do, and this is the path that I'm going to take. Was it pretty clear to you?
Absolutely not.
Oh, that makes me feel better.
Yeah, no, I wanted to be a vet.
Wow.
When I was really young, I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I think, what did I want to be when I was their age?
Yeah.
And I think I thought I'd be a vet. We had a dog, I had a cat that had several kittens, I had 2 hamsters, 2 turtles, 2 budgies, and I would spend one day on the weekend cleaning all the cages out and taking care of them, and really truly thinking that I was going to be a veterinarian one day. And I have a dog now, and my kids, but I don't think I could be further from it. So it was a lot. And I think where I grew up, I would say math and science was very much encouraged and celebrated. I was an athlete growing up as well, and I always was gravitating more towards the arts. Photography, graphic design. This was in the 90s, so you were still developing your own photos in the photo studio. But I was told, you're never going to make money doing that. That's not a great place for a career. It was not as encouraged where I grew up. And there's certain truths to it, but I think at the end of the day, what I really realized is that if you really love something, you have the potential to be successful at it. And I would think eventually financially stable from it. So
yeah, that's such a valid point. You studied typography and design in London.
I did.
So welcome back.
Thank you. It's a second home.
So that was really, at that point, that was really your passion, right?
It was. So after I left high school, I went to a university in Victoria, which is just outside of Vancouver, and was studying what a lot of people studied: philosophy, psychology, sociology, and some photography. And I really just felt like I wasn't quite sure what I was doing. So I left. I took a year off, did a little traveling, worked as a cashier, as a server. I think I worked at Starbucks when they launched a drink called their Tiazzi, and we all had to wear these crazy, colorful hats. But really enjoyed. It was a very special time, and this was in I think 1998, 1999. It was so different back then. There wasn't, the interaction of phones. So you were it just felt more lively.
Everyone was present.
Everyone was present.
They wasn't just filming what's in the room. They were in it.
Everybody was in it, and everybody was present. And I feel nostalgic saying that in midlife, but there was something very special about it. And I did do a program in Vancouver at the Vancouver Film School for 10 months in multimedia. That's what they called it back then. But it was learning Photoshop and graphic design. And then I worked in the .com space for a couple years. 9/11 happened. And I really felt like I wanted to finish a degree and to to do it in design properly. And the United States was too expensive. And I ended up getting I wanted to get out of the country, but the London College of Printing, which I think is now the London College of Communication. Yeah, it actually, that was really where I ended up. And typography back then was big because it was with magazines, and print was still a pretty big thing. We actually did a project about paper disappearing. And we were this underground kind of army that were going up to fight to say we can't have paper disappear. And we didn't think it would become that's really kind of ultimately what happened. Print has disappeared.
What a skill set to have. particularly when building a brand, like having that knowledge and having that.
There's a different mindset in the UK in art school. I think some of the better art schools are here, and they're much more arty. And there is a really different way of training here where they are training the mind to think in a very open way and to be very creative. And, you know, they'll give you a brief like gravity, and they give you one word, and then you have to find ways to represent that artistically.
Oh, I love that. But giving you that freedom to be able to take that word and make it your own.
Yeah, like how do you approach it, you know, something, and how do you solve the problem, right? So like a brief is really there to, you know, even in my work now, different departments will send briefs to each other, and then how does that department solve the brief?
Yes.
So same type of concept. And
how do you see the brief, right? It's kind of like everybody, it's so different how you take something on, which is the beauty of it all.
Yeah, how do you see the brief? How do you present the brief? Like right now, our product marketing department, they are doing a phenomenal job, but the briefs are very detailed in the most amazing way. But when it's briefed into the creative department, it's actually too much.
Yeah.
And creative just wants to know, if we had to focus on one thing in this product, what are we trying to say? So how do you then narrow down a brief?
Simplify it.
Yeah, because at art school, you know, they want you to fill your sketchbooks. And then at the end of the day, like you're starting kind of wide, and then you're narrowing down to more of a pinpointed direction. And I really believe with a brand or in marketing, you kind of need to do the same thing, because you don't have a lot of time to compete with other brands.
Yes.
You don't have a lot of time to get the message across to the customer. So how do you say or show what you need to in a blink of an eye?
Yeah, because you get one chance to sort of catch somebody's eye for the first time, right? And it's like, what is it that you want me to feel, or what am I supposed to be seeing here?
Yes,
you're right. And sometimes it's simplicity is key, isn't it? So let's now sort of talk about, let's go to 2009. You're back in Vancouver, you're on a bit of a sabbatical. Where and when does the aha moment happen for you?
I think I went through a bit of a journey. I was living in California, I guess from 06 to 09. So I left here in 05, and I worked in branding and marketing. And I really was inspired in the US. That was my first time living in the US, by seeing all these entrepreneurs. And again, there's just that mindset down there that's very driven in that space. And I felt like I wanted to start something or do something. And a lot of it was side projects. And they failed. One of them was these beautiful silk scarves that I was having hand painted in Bali, because I spent time in Bali. Nice. And they were really cool. Like they put all the wax on the silk, and then they would bleed color, kind of like almost like a watercolor across the scarf. And they were so gorgeous, but it was very tedious. And to be honest, like in today's day and age, I think they're pretty ugly.
Your style's evolved.
It's evolved. But it was like, it was a sampling stage. It was a colorful experiment. There was a lot of similarities to what I'm doing. It was just in a different format.
Yes.
And it was not like, it was impossible to be able to have production, and like it just wouldn't have worked. So that was abandoned. I had an idea for a double face wool coat for kids and moms. And that was really fun. But sourcing the fabric, realizing that a lot of it was causing pollution in China, where I was looking at it, it was too expensive to do somewhere else. Like you kind of go down and you're problem solving in these ideas. And then I realized I'm like, abandoned ship, that doesn't feel right either. So those were things that I was exploring. And then ultimately I kind of looked more at myself. I had really bad skin. So I suffered from a lot of acne from age 13. And at that time, there were more natural products that were more powdery, that kind of would cover but still accentuate the texture.
Yes.
Or there was like more high glam products that were in some of the designer names, or the more prestige cosmetic brands that were kind of coming out at that time that worked, but it would make me break out. So I really felt like there was a gap, kind of like you think of some of the like French niche brands at that time that were coming out, like the Isabelle Marant and the Vanessa Brunos. There was nobody in the beauty space doing anything like that. And so it
was either like the high street or the high end.
High street or high end. And there was like, and for high end, like I could relate to some of it, but that wasn't really accessible to me at the time either. So it's like, I wanted something that I could relate to more, that was a bit more boutique. And I couldn't find it. So I thought to myself, how would I start this, or what would I want to explore? And one product that I used from London when I was in uni here was the Labello cherry tinted chapstick.
Oh my gosh.
Do you guys still have Labello?
I don't think, do we still do
Is it
Labella?
Nivea now? I wonder if it's maybe Nivea.
I know the cherry chapstick you're talking about.
Remember?
That brings me back. That I can even like taste it.
Yeah. They had like cherry. There's a couple different.
Who was it? Chaps or something?
Yeah. I think it was bought by Nivea in the US, but Labello was here 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I always had a nice stain from that cherry chapstick.
So you liked the kind of after the
Yeah. There was like a beautiful stain and it was really moisturizing. But when I looked at the ingredients, I was like, wow, I wonder if this could be done in a more cleaner. Well, now the word is clean, but really it was a more natural way.
Yeah.
So that was my brief. I was like, can I make my Labello cherry tinted chapstick more natural? And that's how it was really started. And it was a $25,000 line of credit, 2 credit cards, working a day job, and then coming home and working from like 8 till 2 in the morning for 2 years.
And how did you know where to start? Because obviously you've been, up until this point, it's been very colourful for you. You've got sort of lots of different experience and lots of different backgrounds. But how did you think, okay, I'm going to start developing this? Where did you start? Was it from a kind of business plan perspective, or was it straight up creative? I've got this benchmark and I'm on a mission.
I had a benchmark. The name is actually, it's somewhere in the archives, but I had a huge piece of sketching paper, tracing paper. And I've always loved the name Ilia. It's a family name. It was my uncle's name. It's my brother's middle name. It sounds really feminine in English.
Yes, gorgeous.
But it's a masculine name in Slavic languages.
Wow.
So it kind of had that like masculine and feminine. When you write it in caps, it's really clear. You have all those sticks that are very architectural. If you put it in lowercase, you can't see it at all. So there was it would go invisible. So there was something kind of alluring about it. So I kept playing around with drawing the logo. And that's how I would say it started, knowing that the brief was this chapstick.
Right.
And it just started like that. So what does the logo look like for this brand that I'm trying to create? How would I package this? And I think having the graphic design, branding, creative background, when people say, did that help you? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't have to hire anybody. I could kind of do it myself.
And you can articulate exactly what you're thinking, because that's always my problem.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've got this idea and I'm thinking, but I'm like, if I had that skill set, I'd be dangerous, because I would never sleep and B, because I know exactly what I want and I'd be there hours perfecting. But for me, that is always the problem, where I can see it and it's not being quite articulated how I want. And that process can take
time,
quite a long time. Yeah. Which is an incredible skill set to have. When I think of Ilia now, I just think of these, like the packaging, everything is so gorgeous, so clean, so premium feeling. Those first rounds of design
were bad.
So it didn't look where it is now, or was it still that kind of feel, that clean, that sort of?
It was clean back in 2009.
Minimalist.
It was minimalist. The logo used to be thin, really, there was a lot of thin. You think about NARS, even they kept it, which is amazing. And the design around that is probably it's iconic, really. But it was a thin logo, which eventually we did rebrand in 2019. So it started, I did the branding in 2009.
Wow, yes.
And the brand launched in 2011. And it was so small, but it was more of like a silvery gold Pantone. And I had this, we still have the case. It's on our Balmy Tint, which is our, it's like the lip balm kind of lipstick product. That is what that emulated from the Labello. But I would say, we still have the same case, but the logo and some of the design changed and it became much cleaner when we rebranded in 2019, 2020.
It's so strong. So there are so many stages and phases
there's
of Ilia
9
that
lives.
I kind of which is incredible. So I want to make sure we complete all of them. Let's talk about, so you've really got this creative vision. That's what you do. You've got this benchmark. How was you on the other side of the fence, like bringing a business to life? How was that for you? Did you have is that a strength of yours, putting a business plan together and getting something off the ground from a financial perspective and everything else in between?
I think where I was lucky in that time is that social media barely existed. So
what a beautiful time. I mean, it
It
has so
is.
many benefits and so many pros, but like you said before, that's such a special time where everything wasn't so dependent on social media.
It wasn't, and I didn't have a big business plan. I had $25,000. I think the whole thing cost me $35,000 to launch.
Right.
I had 10,000 pieces that were made. People asked if I was making it in my kitchen, and I was not. I know there's people that do that. I think that's okay for some things, but ultimately, like with all of the regulatory and the testing, and this.
I don't see how that. I personally don't see how.
Yeah, it's not very safe.
I think now I'm just not sure how that would happen now. There is so much red tape that you don't have any control over, right? And you're submitting for testing and claims and everything else in between.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust my kitchen. I mean, I love my kitchen. But
Yeah,
I don't think I could quite handle
no.
that.
And I mean, and for lipsticks in general, like it's quite a process. We still use book molds. You can have it done with a silicone machine, but a book mold is you have the formula, you would hot pour it into the book, like a metal book mold that has that lipstick mold, and that generally all needs to be done with a manufacturer. So I found one in California who really, her and I went through so much together for this first formula and got it to a stage where we kind of felt like it was something different.
Right.
It was really comfortable on the lips. It had a point of difference to the market. And I would say like it was very much kind of the beginning of figuring out, what is this going to look like? And at the time, it took 2 years. And when I went to market, I was still working another job because I think people don't realize how expensive it is to start something and how much in debt you will go. And you could go really in debt, but back then you didn't need to. Like I would just walk into stores and ask people if they would take it.
Wow.
I sent off a note to Colette in Paris, and I didn't know anybody, and I had beautiful stationery that was letterpressed with typography.
Of course.
and wrote a nice note naively, and they took it.
That's incredible.
And that was very lucky and very naive of me to I didn't realize what a big deal that was. Net-a-Porter here, when they launched Beauty in 2013, they took it. So there was no big accounts. Like those are notable accounts, but I wouldn't say they generate a ton of volume. So what was lucky is that I had the time to live in 3 garages and build this business really slowly and only be a few million in revenue within the first 5 years. So it was very slow in the beginning, but the market wasn't ready for the category. The category actually hadn't even been developed because people said, "What are you? You're not natural. You're not totally natural. You're not totally organic, and you're not conventional. What are you?" And I said, "I don't know, but this is what I am." And it was the beginning of the clean category.
God, that is such a kind of interesting point, and how incredible, but also how frustrating at the same time to be. You're actually ahead of the market, not necessarily predicting that this is the way the world is going to move, but you've got something that people are kind of a bit confused
unsure
about, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that you touch on how financially taxing it is for a founder at the start of a project like this, because people assume that you've got these contracts and you're at Net-a-Porter, which is incredible, but it's not going to be massive volume.
No.
It's that kind of gives you that. It's a premium outlet that gives you that vanity piece almost, but it's not gonna. You're not jetting off around the world and you've got it's not giving you this open checkbook.
No.
And I think a lot of people see on the outside, and particularly with social media now, that you're in this store and, Selfridges does that here, or the Harrods, or those big department stores that come with this kind of glossy idea and they're incredible, and it's a real
illusion.
It's a real gold star to say that we are accepted here and this is the level that we're at.
Right.
But it can really be an illusion. And I remember talking to Sunday Riley on the podcast, and she was saying that she was in Bloomingdale's and here, there and everywhere, but she went to check out in the grocery store with her daughter in the trolley and she couldn't.
Yeah.
And people don't talk about that enough, and how, as I said before, how financially taxing that start of the journey is, even when you are stocked in these wonderful retailers.
Yeah, no, the beginning was very financially taxing. And I mean, granted, I didn't have children yet, and I had more freedoms because I didn't have those responsibilities, of a family either. So there were more freedoms in the beginning. But then actually when I was pregnant in 2015, my dad passed away. And it was very sudden. And he more or less said to me, you are the one of, I have 2 half siblings and a younger sibling. He's like, you are the one of the 4 that has to step up. Wow. I know. And I hate to say that, like, there's things that happen in your life, and I was kind of mad because I'm like, I don't really want to take that on.
That responsibility.
Yeah, but I also,
pressure.
you also just kind of do, I think, or at least I did. And
he said that knowing that that's exactly what you could do.
yeah, and he said, I think you have the potential to go really far. And the business was still really small. My brother had joined me at that point to help. So it was more like a little family business, at least between him and I. And it wasn't super serious. I mean, we were still, I think, just a couple million in revenue. I think I just got out of debt that year. So that's, 4 or 5 years later, getting out of debt. And just having a break even, really. So it took, but enough to live off of.
I'm always really interested in this because I think some incredible success stories have happened where family team up and work together on these incredible businesses. But also when I think, and I put the shoe on my foot, I think, gosh, it adds another layer of pressure and that family dynamic. How was it sort of having that journey? Not begin because you'd been doing it for a bit anyway, but that is still very much the start of Ilia's journey with your sibling. How was that for you guys as family?
Not great.
No.
No.
I would wonder that because
it was not great.
I've spoke to a lot of women on here and they've had incredible stories, but I just cannot imagine it.
It wasn't the best idea, in hindsight. But I also knew that I had somebody that had my back,
Yes.
which was really important.
Which is special.
It's special, and we did build a lot of those beginning pieces together. I think the business did get to a certain size eventually that didn't make sense for my brother as much.
Right.
And it wasn't until 2016, I just had my first baby, and I was sitting in a Sephora meeting, and they said, we want to create this new category. And we want to be, basically, would you like to be the guinea pig to test it?
Yes, you're ready for my category, finally. I've been waiting for this moment.
Yeah, so we actually came up with the list for the Clean at Sephora together. Wow. And that was really, that was a moment where I was sitting in there. I think I had my breast pump sitting next to me. And I was with Alison Hahn, who was the head of color there for over a decade. She just recently retired. Oh. But I leaned over to her and I said, I really don't know this world. I know the boutique world, but I don't know this world. And this is a big world. And I am going to need some help. Do you know anybody that could help me? And I've said this before on podcasts, but that's really, when I met my partner, who she introduced me to, who had worked and run Too Faced Cosmetics, Bobby Brown. And this woman, Linda Berkowitz, came in as a consultant. And eventually she came on board as my CEO and took a risk on us when we were so small. And that was the beginning of the journey where 2 years after that, we got funding. Then we did another round. And then really, actually, it was during COVID that the brand exploded. And it was everything I think was based on the timing.
And I think when you think of you launched 2011.
Took almost a decade.
2009 is where you kind of have the idea. And then you're talking 2020 to really see that the world catch on to, your brainchild. It's so reassuring for so many women to hear that, because I think we're in this age now where it's all about quick growth and, everything's fast paced and it's founder-led content and it's brands are sort of the graphs that are pinging like that overnight. It's so reassuring to hear how gradual it's been for you. And
slow.
You're very much in this boom now and it's incredible, but slow growth's also a thing too.
Yeah. No, I think what was great about the slow growth is that you have time to make so many mistakes. So I had a line that was eventually completely discontinued by 2017, except for a few handful of products, because I tried to make some of the products more natural. The technology wasn't there yet. So I went through this whole learning curve for the first several years, of which I'm like, this is not good enough. That's not good enough. And then again, technology improved. We launched our Limitless Lash Mascara, I think in 2017 or 18. That's a long time ago already. It took 3 or 4 years to become the #1 mascara at Sephora. And it took another 3 years to become the #1 family with our other mascara. We just got it this year. So it was a 7-year journey to kind of be the #1 collection, more or less, at Sephora overall. And I don't think people realize, like, even in launching a product, to build the marketing up around it and to get it to a spot, not that you're just at for a flash, but that you can actually hold for a long period of time, takes a lot of
Slow and steady.
slow and
wins the
steady,
race.
slow and steady, you know, and constant attention. And how do you bring attention to your heroes? That's one thing I can say. Like, if you are in the product market, what's your hero? How do you celebrate it? How do you get people to try it? Make sure you don't take your focus off of it. We have 2, you know, and one of them was launched in 2017 and the other one was launched in 2020. And we still have to, and they are a big portion of the business, and we still have to beat that drum, you know, and make sure we call back to it often, because now at this size, you know, you make a little mistake and it can be quite expensive.
Yeah. Now, how do you think the way that it goes back to problem solving again, right? But the way that you handle, I suppose, decision making, however that looks, how do you think it changes for you versus kind of somebody that would have had that quick growth overnight? Because obviously there are pros and cons in everything, right? You say quick growth, maybe it would have been a lot easier to get funding earlier on, or however that may look. But what do you think is a real win? I suppose that you've got the experience on your side, right? And that you know the DNA of your brand over time that you perhaps wouldn't have had the time to if you'd have just launched last year and then Sephora's on and it kind of is all a little bit like that hamster wheel, isn't it, I suppose? Yeah.
Well, I think for us, I say this often, we were first in Best Dressed when it comes to being a clean makeup brand in Sephora. So we were really the first to launch, the first to kind of be trialed, the first to fail at certain products, and then the first to really go for it in other areas of opportunity. And that really did give us a leg up. And we didn't have a lot of growth. But then, and these numbers are public, we raised $3 million in 2018. And I think we were only $5 million in revenue. In 2019, we raised 10, ran out very quickly. And at that year, we were at 15 million. The next year, we went to 37. And then the next year after that, we went to 100. So the growth, it's like there was no growth. And we were sub 5 million for a decade. And then all of a sudden, there was an explosion. And that growth was like whiplash, because you're trying to build the team. You're trying to
be ready for the growth.
Yeah, we couldn't predict it, actually. So we had to figure out how to scale, you know, we hired somebody in operations who had come from L'Oreal. He just actually left a couple weeks ago. He was with me for the last 6 years. And, but we really, I mean, it's amazing where he started with only 10 people in the business and where he left it from a supply chain standpoint. But that is such a critical piece of the business when you are anticipating major growth. And I think that piece alone, I mean, all pieces are critical to making something happen, but that piece alone, once it got ironed out, really helped set us in the right path.
And how does that sort of level of growth feel? Because obviously it's so incredible to see and look on from the outside. But how does that make you feel as a founder?
I don't think there's a lot of time to absorb it.
You sit back and actually take stock.
Yeah. I think I had another kid in 2019. So 2020, I had like a 6-year-old
and that will take
or a 5-year-old
focus.
and a 1-year-old. Yeah. And there was that. And then I was really in the business, like to a point. I have talked about this too, where I burned out hard a few times. And then we sold a big piece of it in 2021. And we moved to Vancouver, and I had a kidney start to shut down. So it was very much my body saying to me, stop. You know, and I think like to your point, you know, problem solving, I loved it so much. It's almost like I was addicted to trying to make everything work. But ultimately, you know, I would say it was not necessarily the healthiest thing, you know, in the long run. So in the last 3-4 years, I really figured out how to balance my life a little bit more.
And do you think, like, sometimes as women, we hold that almost like a badge of honor, and we get have sort of a bit of a toxic mindset to how hard we work, and it almost becomes our whole personality. I'm guilty of it. Like, I'll be, you know, I'm happy to be the first one and the last one to leave. We do what it takes, but it's almost like it becomes part of your personality, and you kind of, I'm a hard worker.
Yeah.
And I almost think sometimes it's okay to take that time for yourself, and
Yes.
I'm all for it, but it's an interesting thing, and I'm not sure if that's something that has been with me since being a child, but actually it can be quite a toxic mindset to have. I was saying actually a couple of weeks ago to my friend, we were talking about this, that, you know, and I pride myself on being a hard worker and that makes me a great person, and it's kind of what we've all told ourselves. And I remember it was last year that my daughter had written me a birthday card, and they sent me some lovely cards and wrote some gorgeous messages, and one of the things was, "Mummy, I love you so much, you work so hard." And I thought, this is really, it's become my personality now at this point. But it's interesting how, like I said, that we kind of wear that as a bit of a badge of honour. Mm-hmm. Were you in that place?
Yeah, I was. I'm not in that place anymore.
No, and it's a wonderful thing where you free yourself of that. How did you arrive at that destination? Did a lot change when you sold a large portion of the company? Was that like, okay, let's enjoy the fruits of this labour now?
I think so. You know, we had investors that also were pushing to sell once we reached a certain threshold, and I was on the fence about it. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, there was a lot of luck involved in that because it was a good time to do it.
Right.
You know, it's a lot harder nowadays than it was back then. And we were lucky. The business was really strong. So, and we had the right people running each department. You know, I think one thing too, when you're running a business, you're obviously doing everything in the beginning yourself, but there'll be some things that you're better at. You know, like for me, I was better at creative. I was better at product. Finance, I could balance because I didn't really hire a lot of people, but was that my area of expertise to like run a proper P&L? And no, you know, so making sure that you have the right people who are better than you in certain areas, I think was really, really important. And then figuring out we're all kind of after balance in some ways. And I'm very fortunate and grateful that I was able to be in a position to take some of the heat off.
Yes.
And not everybody's in that position, and I get that. But I think it's...
but it wasn't always. You earned the right to be in that position. It didn't always. We discussed that, like, being the CEO or being a founder in those early years of a business is the most unsexy role ever.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like such a hot title, doesn't it? I'm the CEO, but really that means you're head of finance, you're the cleaner, you're the head of creative, you're everything in between, you know. It's a lot.
And in 2016, I gave that title away because I think that unless you are an operator that understands, and a CEO to me, they're an operator.
Yeah.
You know, and a founder can be an operator, but they usually often are also creatives. And was I a better operator or was I a better creative? And I was a better creative. So I gave the title away. And I remember my brother's like, "You can't give that away." And I'm like, "It's just a title."
Yes.
And I was like, honestly, it doesn't mean anything to me. He's like, "No, but you're the founder. You need to be the CEO." I'm like, "No, I don't." And by giving it away, I gave it to somebody who knew how to be a CEO and was a CEO and understood what it was to be a CEO of a company that could go to 100 million.
Yes.
So by taking that off of me and giving it to somebody that knew how to drive that car, I could go drive the car that I wanted in my lane for product and focus on that. And they could focus more on operating the company.
But that's, that's testament to you too, because sometimes, and some people find it really hard to sort of, it's an ego thing, right?
Yes, it is.
Leaving the ego at the door and saying, actually, you are so much better at this than me. Mm-hmm. But also, how much do you love your baby? How much do you love your brand? Because if we're all honest, we know what our strengths are, as you say, and my strengths will never be finance. If there's a budget, I'm going to go over it. That's just, my husband will back me up on that point too. And it's being true to yourself, but leaving your ego at the door enough to say, no, I want this to fly and I want this to grow, and it isn't going to with me.
Yeah,
in that role.
Well, luckily, like when we did it, she's like, you're the boss, you still get the final say. So there was an understanding between us, and we worked. So we were actually kind of known as a duo in the industry, and her and I could kind of read each other's mind when we were in meetings and would kind of play both sides of what we needed. And it was a true partnership. Whereas if we did not agree on something, we would meet and talk and sometimes discuss it firmly in front of the team, but in a way that was respectful enough to argue each side and then reach a resolution for what was best for the business, which is also where you kind of have to move your ego aside.
Absolutely.
It's like, what is the best decision for the business? And it's still a conversation that happens today because now we're so much bigger and there's so many more things that have to be met. And we do have a certain EBITDA that has to be reached and a certain percentage and a certain top line, a certain bottom line, a certain percentage of growth. And it's so much bigger. There's so much more. But we still have to remember, you know, that we're making product and that we have to put the best product on the shelf for our customers. Like, what is going to differentiate us from somebody buying our mascara or somebody else's? Like, how do we, like that little moment, whether it's on social media or when somebody's standing in front of your product at a store, there's just a split second again for them to like be captured by that. You know, and that we get so bogged down into all these details and the P&Ls and the forecasting and all this stuff that's so important. But if you just zoom out for a second and think about where that magic happens for that transaction, like that doesn't ever change. That's always like from the first transaction to where I am now, we have to think about recreating that magic. So I think it's important to stay, outside at times.
Yeah, it is. It's important to always zoom out.
Yeah.
How would you say your role has changed since you sold a large portion of the company? How would you, for you personally, but like day to day?
Yeah, a lot. I think, the Clarence purchased a majority of the company. They actually more or less purchased the whole thing, and then I bought back in, which was a really nice way to do it.
Yes.
So I still have some ownership in the company, and they are more hands-off, fairly hands-off in the sense that we're really operating on our own.
Right.
So I still get to more or less decide a lot of the products that we want to launch with the team. There's an approval process where we work on that together to green light something. I would say my role has changed in that over a 3-year period, I pulled way back.
Right.
So I'm still involved in product and creative, and I get to interact with leadership. I get to go and do press and things like this. I probably work like 3 full days a week, but I have some flexibility more to be around my kids and do a few other things. So yeah, I've like positioned it in a way where
it's healthy.
Yeah, it's more healthy.
Yeah.
It's more. It really is more balanced, you know. And that wasn't by accident. I worked really hard at doing that. Like I worked with a coach. There was a lot of things that I did to get myself there, but it was important to do that.
I'm just reading these numbers here, and do correct me because sometimes we get these and they're a little bit older. But you've grown Ilia from those 6 lip tints in 2011 to a $200 million global brand. You're selling 1 limitless lash mascara every 15 seconds. Like, insane. How does it feel as Sasha to read that?
Sometimes it doesn't feel true.
Yeah.
Again, like it's become so big, and
30 plus countries in multiple stores.
Yeah. I still like to think about that interaction with the customer and that little moment of sale with that one customer.
Yeah.
I think to me, like, if I look at how big it is, I think sometimes I feel like I get lost in the storm of all of it, which is amazing to see. But I still want to stay connected to it kind of in a more intimate way. It's kind of what keeps me maybe honest throughout that in some way. And it makes it feel like it hasn't really changed, you know, not to say it's changed for the worse because it got so much bigger, but there's something, you know, you can get, again, bogged down by something that looks so big.
Yeah.
So if I really narrow in on what I'm good at doing with the company today and stay focused on that with product, for example, I can keep doing what I'm doing and not really notice the changes as much.
And to keep customers, I suppose, engaged in that way is every customer wants to feel like it's just them shopping, right?
I think so.
You want to feel like this is even in your girls group chat when you recommend something, like you take pride in it being your recommendation and like you problem solving for somebody else. I think that is a real, like you say, special thing, and focusing on that, catching that one customer's eye.
Yeah, I think so.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, word of mouth and getting product in people's hands. There's still something In Canada, not everybody knows about it. I'd say more people, like, it's grown a lot and people know about it, but in the US, it's definitely like where we're really strong. And sometimes when I go do things in Canada, if people haven't heard about it, and it's exciting to get the product into their hand.
Educate them, yeah.
Like at my kids' school or something, if there's like a little gift bag, and it kind of feels like the old days.
Oh, yeah. You'll be popular at the school, for sure, for sure. What's next for Ilia? Because it seems, like I said, like it's such an incredible story of slow growth, but incredible growth. What is next?
I think, a lot of our values come into play for what we like to do. One of them is think fully.
Right.
So think fully is really like thinking of things more from a 360-degree perspective. And I would say with our product, we're starting to look at that a little bit more. So we have a big library, but there's still a lot of opportunity. For example, skin tint, that's one of our best-selling products. It's a foundation, it's skincare, it's SPF all in one. And it's everything in one bottle for complexion. But we have other pathways that we're starting to explore where we would break that out a little bit differently. I think there's different trends and coverage that are coming. So being able to have a library that, you remember how I don't know if you remember the Clinique counters, and this was also way back, and you would be able to find your skin type and then they would kind of build a story for you based on that. I do think there's a lot of opportunity there for us with our library. Because the purpose of, like, if people meet me and they say, what do you do? My elevator pitch, I guess you could say, is I make makeup that makes your skin better. So we're really looking to change people's skin so that it's looking better, but it actually, the ingredients in there are truly healing the skin, repairing the skin, benefiting in the skin in a way where it's balancing everything out so that you can really have your best skin.
Yes.
I'd say, that is something that we really strive towards and will continue to strive towards as our North Star for the company.
It's so incredible to see. And that there's something so visually pleasing to me about anything that has a pipette on it.
Oh, really?
And yes. And those skin tints are just so incredible. They do feel like skincare. And I'm always that person that it feels like a real treat, like self-care when you're doing your makeup.
Yeah, no, it's got like really amazing ingredients in it that really nourish the skin. It plumps, gives elasticity. You kind of get like that light to medium coverage, but it doesn't feel so makeup-y on the face.
No, absolutely that. I want to do our rocket round now.
Yeah.
Which is essentially, we like to say they're quick-fire questions, but when two girls are talking, it's never that quick. But we'll do our best. I ask every guest the same question. So the first one is, what do you believe are the non-negotiables for running a business?
Non-negotiables for running a business. You have to be honest about what's happening. You can't give up. And you have to stay true to what you believe is right, especially as you get bigger. Because I think people will have a lot of different opinions. Yeah. But you, also having a brand, know generally what is right for your brand and to ensure that you always listen to that intuition.
Yeah, you're so right. As it gets, there's a lot of noise, isn't there? And it can be really distracting. But knowing those, we say brand guidelines, don't we, to sort of communicate that to other people, but knowing what is in the DNA and not being distracted.
Yeah. Which I would say being clear on your values. We did values, I think, in 2014, 15. And we had some before, but then we did it. And we really did it properly again over the last few years and really hammered that in, especially as the team got bigger. And I would say that is how we solve a lot of problems, is to look to the values. So that's also, I would say, a non-negotiable that I wish I did sooner, because it really helps set the stage for how we work through things.
Yes, that's interesting. When did you first realise that you truly launched?
I think probably getting into Colette.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like a little moment. I think I did a trip to Hong Kong. There was like some packaging sourcing that I was doing over there, and I was wandering around. I had a good friend that lived there back in, I think it was 2011 or 2012, and I was like, wow, we made it into Colette. We're real.
Yes, we actually exist.
We exist.
Yeah. Seeing something in real life that is yours, that it lives up here for the longest amount of time, and seeing that on a shelf is a pinch me moment for sure, isn't it? What is the first thing you do when you wake up and the last thing you do before you go to bed? I know you're probably jet lagged at the minute, so it's all probably a bit upside down.
Yeah, at home, I probably let my dog out
Yes, good.
in the morning, I would say, and get out of bed. I try not to reach for my phone. I try to take a moment on that. And then the last thing I do before going to bed, I'm actually reading again. So yeah, after I put the kids to
Are you
bed,
reading
like
anything good at the minute?
lots of different books. I'm actually just about to start Elizabeth Gilbert's, is it Take Me? I think it's called Take Me Down to the River. I just got it and I'm going to
okay.
start it. But yeah, that's something I'm looking forward to.
I'll have a little look. We like to do a little book club on here. I'm always getting
All right.
recommendations. Yeah. One piece of advice that you wish you hadn't listened to.
One piece of advice that I wish I hadn't listened to. Listening to too many other opinions.
Yeah.
You know, I think like it's important for people to to be heard. But I think that it's and that sense of equality on a team is somewhat important, but it's also important to know who owns what role. And to make that really clear out of fairness to your team and out of fairness to how to make decisions to move forward.
Yeah.
So I would say, clear decision making. Sometimes people would say like, oh, well, these people want to weigh in and this and that. And it's like, okay, but we got to move forward, you know, and who owns that decision, right?
Yes.
And then getting clarity around that once we straighten that out in the team. And it's still kind of we need to go back and iron it
Ongoing,
often.
yeah.
But I would say it really, it made things a lot easier to move forward.
Yeah, that's a good way to frame it, like who owns that decision, because we talk about roles and responsibilities, but it always does get a little bit grey, doesn't it? But yeah, who owns that decision and who? That's a very interesting way to frame it. I love that. What is a skill that you'd love to learn?
I'm actually learning piano again.
No way. I
Yeah.
love this.
I played when I was 9, 10, and 11, and I made it to Furry Lee's. And I used to dance too. And piano and dancing probably would have been a better pathway for me. My dad wanted me to be a swimmer, so I became a competitive swimmer. And I learned a lot doing that too. Although it was not necessarily, I went for several years. It was not necessarily for me. So
Such discipline, isn't it? I know that
It
a
is.
couple of my daughter's friends swim competitively, and that the time they have to get up before school to do the heart.
Oh, yeah.
I always think, gosh,
it was wild. I can't believe my parents, well, we would all take turns carpooling, but yeah, it was really
it's intense.
intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How lovely that you're learning that again.
Yeah, I just started. My kids are playing piano, and I think it's something that I've wanted to do. And there's a song from Jan Tiersen from the Amelie movie. I think it's called Comptoir de Nete or something like that. And I've always wanted to learn to play it. So it's different though. Like the piano teacher, she's actually Serbian, so I feel like she's so lovely, my kid's piano teacher, and she said, you know, when you were 11, the way that your brain connects to your fingers is totally different.
Yeah, I bet.
And now, you know, more in midlife, she was right. Like my hands kind of want to move faster, but they can't. They can't.
So humbling.
Yeah. So she's like, but you'll get there. She's like, you just need to practice and remind yourself.
So funny. You look over at your 10-year-old and they've just got it, and you're like, how?
Yeah, that like hand-eye coordination when they're kids. Like they can play video games fast. They can, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. But you didn't realize it.
No.
So
And also, don't tell me that.
yeah.
What is one thing that you wish someone had told you before you started your career? Or before you launched Ilia?
I think, slow and steady wins the race.
You're testament to that.
Yeah, I think, you know, in the beginning, I thought I would be I think a lot of people, even when I look at business plans today, business plan is just like, it's a wish on paper. You know,
It really is.
to say that, you know, you're going to hit it, it's kind of like a birth plan.
Yeah.
You know, like people will have a birth plan and like everyone's like, oh God, the birth plan did not go according to plan. And it's like, no, it did not, you know.
Baby
and
had its own mind.
yeah, you don't hear that many people where it like went to plan, right? And I'd say for businesses, it's a similar thing. So yeah.
Because it only works if it connects.
Yeah.
And someone wants to buy it and they buy it again and again. So it really is a wish that's written down.
Yeah. So I think like the debt was scary. That was really hard, like almost running out of money many, many, many times. So yeah. And I also, I think, but we were still cautious. But yeah, I think you have to have patience there. And I will say, I even see today a lot of brands, some that I even invest in, how they spend the money and then they run out of money. And it's a hard thing to balance.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to balance.
Yeah, particularly when you're a founder and that pressure feels like it's
On you.
aiming one way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And that is where you say, like, it can become a little bit toxic of the pressure you put on yourself. And also, it's not just pressure you put on yourself, it's outside too.
Yeah.
You know, you have that pressure to deliver, and
Yeah.
it can be really scary and isolating. So it can be a lonely world being a founder.
Yes.
It really, really
It can.
What would be the dream collab for Ilia?
Ooh.
Whether that's a person or a brand on brand collab.
Yeah, we are doing a few things. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but we're doing a collab with a tile company out of California, which it's we have our color palette, that's going to be a bit playful, and we're actually redoing some offices, and we have a new office space, so there'll be some stories that we'll weave through there, and there again, there's that kind of art and architecture pillar that we get to lean back into. So.
I love it when you see brands from completely different spaces.
Yeah.
Because of course, everything can exist at once, right?
Totally.
As a consumer, you use lots of different brands from lots of different places, and you all have that same customer. But I just love it when it feels so niche. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And then lastly, if you could choose one female figure, past or present, as a mentor, who would that be?
Share.
Love that. And why? Tell me, why Cher?
I think she's cool.
Yes, she's very cool.
I think, her mom, I think there's a quote from her, and her mom said, you got to go marry a rich man, Mom. And she said to her mom, I am the rich man. Or something. And
Iconic.
I think, I read her memoir. I feel like she was somebody who was so ahead of her time from a fashion standpoint. She took a lot of risk. Like, I think another thing is a business, you have to take risk in order to grow. You have to be willing to risk a lot as a founder. And she did that in so many ways, and lived her life in a very interesting way that, I think is somewhat admirable for a woman of her time.
Iconic.
Yeah, she's iconic.
Isn't she?
She's
It'd be great
iconic.
to have her on speed dial. And then every episode, I ask our guests to leave a tip. If you could sort of look back at your career, if there was one sort of piece of advice that you would give to a lady looking to launch that's listening to this today, what would that be?
Enjoy the little moments.
Oh,
I think,
yes.
enjoy the little moments because they go fast, and I think we're always in our life, like when we get here, I'll have this. When I get here, I'll have that. But looking back, I would say some of the best times were in like the hardest struggles of this business, and there is like a rush to like, if we don't figure this out, we might have to fold.
Yeah.
And those are little moments that are worth enjoying because everything is always changing. Nothing stays the same.
That is such lovely advice, because it's true. Something will happen and you don't feel like you have time to acknowledge it, because then, okay, that's great. We've reached that, and now that this is the next thing, or the next event, or the next launch, or however that looks.
Yeah.
And you don't sort of take time to be present.
Yeah, you got to celebrate your wins, and you got to celebrate your wins with your team.
Yes.
Some things are not going to be wins, and some years are hard. It's a little bit of a harder year. Last year was a little bit of a harder year, but there are still big wins. So where can we celebrate our wins? Where do we know we have opportunity? You got to celebrate your wins.
I love that. And then lastly, I ask everyone this because I'm nosy and I also love food. We talk about ladies who launch, but when it comes to being a lady who lunches, how do you typically spend your, well, I always say it's a bit of an elusive lunch hour, because actually saying that, some founders are very strict and they take time for lunch, and that's very important, but some are like, what's a lunch break? I eat in a meeting and it is what it is. How do you spend your lunch hour? Where are you? What are you doing? And is there a go-to meal?
That's a loaded one. I would say, well, now living in Vancouver, I work from home more. And I actually, if I could give another tip, is block off your lunch hour.
Love.
Because you will eventually burn out. And if you're able to take that break, I actually encourage our entire team, please don't schedule meetings between 12 and 1. don't do that. There's enough already, you know? And I think, like, can you take a break? Kind of helps regulate everybody. Everybody gets a moment. So I'm usually going for a walk with the dog around 12 to 1. And I would say if I'm traveling, like it's gung-ho, you know, and I don't really get my lunch hour, but walk with the dog at home. And then in the winter, it's soup with maybe some cheese and toast.
Oh, that's a good one.
Well,
It's
really
soup
simple.
season at the
Soup
minute,
season,
isn't it?
yeah.
It really is. What's your soup of choice?
I like a good butternut squash.
Oh, yes.
Maybe a pumpkin.
Nice.
Yeah. Some of the orange
See, there you go.
vegetables.
I
Yeah.
like you more now. I know your soup choice. See what happens. It's crazy. Thank you so much. This has been such a lovely conversation, and I'm honestly, from the outside, what you've achieved is just so incredible. You should be incredibly proud. It's so inspiring to hear your story, and I think our listeners will take a lot from this. So thank you.
Thank you so much for
Love
having me.
that. Don't forget to follow us on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcast to make sure that you don't miss out, because next time we're going to be talking to another incredible lady who launched. If, like me, you're a watcher, then please follow us on YouTube and don't forget to like and subscribe.